This is Judges chapter 5. After coming out of 20 years of national servitude, it's time to celebrate. Verse 1. Then Deborah and Barak the son of Abinoam sang on that day, saying, Because the leaders took the lead in Israel, and because the people offered themselves willingly, be blessed, Yahweh. Hear, you kings, give ear, you princes. I, even I, will sing to Yahweh. I will sing praise to Yahweh, the God of Israel. Comment. In verse 1, Deborah and Barak are singing a song. Credit goes to the leaders, the followers, and to Yahweh. It says, Hear, you kings, give ear, you princes. In other words, we don't care who you are, you just listen to us for a minute. Verse 4, Yahweh, when you went out of Seir, when you marched out of the field of Edom, the earth trembled, the sky also dropped. Yes, the clouds dropped water. The mountains quaked Yahweh's presence, even Sinai at the presence of Yahweh, the God of Israel. Comment. Those are the places through or near which the children of Israel passed during their travels in the desert with Moses. They saw great and terrible manifestations of Yahweh's presence, such as quaking and shaking of Mount Sinai. The mention of those places recalls the greatness of Yahweh and his awesome potential for wreaking destruction. Verse 6. In the days of Shamgar the son of Anath, in the days of Jael, the highways were unoccupied. The travelers walked through byways. The rulers ceased in Israel. They ceased until I, Deborah, arose, until I arose a mother in Israel. Comment. Shamgar was the judge right before Deborah who delivered Israel from Philistine oppression. Jael is the woman with the hammer and tent peg who did her part against the Canaanite oppression. During both periods, the highways were unoccupied. Travelers used footpaths and byways because they didn't want to meet their oppressors on the roads. They couldn't get from place to place without risking their lives and property. Verse 8. They chose new gods. Comment. This was the source of the problem. Israel forsook Yahweh and chose new gods, the Baals and Asheroth, Judges 3:7. So Yahweh brought their enemies against them, and still in verse 8, Then war was in the gates. Was there a shield or a spear seen among 40,000 in Israel? Comment. There were no shields or spears to be found because their enemies must have gone house to house and disarmed every Israelite. Weapons were illegal. They no longer had control of their country. There were no Israelite rulers in the country. Verse 9. My heart is toward the governors of Israel who offered themselves willingly among the people. Bless Yahweh. Comment. It wasn't just the common man who came out to fight. Leaders of the people came out to fight as well, rather than being complicit with the enemy and enjoying the favor of the enemy. These were individual acts of courage similar to the acts of the Founding Fathers during the American Revolution. When they plotted revolution and openly signed the Declaration of Independence, they knew they would either win the fight or they'd be hanged by the enemy. So the leaders stood up at their own great peril. Verse 10. Speak, you who ride on white donkeys, you who sit on rich carpets, and you who walk by the way, far from the noise of archers, in the places of drawing water. There they will rehearse Yahweh's righteous acts, the righteous acts of his rule in Israel. Then Yahweh's people went down to the gates. Comment. This is a vision of Israelites celebrating across all spectrums of society, from those who are rich enough to ride on white donkeys and sit on carpets, all the way down to the common folk and youngsters who draw water and sit on an earthen floor. Everywhere on the roads and at the wells where they run into each other, they'll be re-rehearsing and reenacting the battle in their minds and in their conversations. It's going to be the stuff of legend. It says Yahweh's people went down to the gates. If you live in a city or near a city with a wall, the wall has a gate. That's where people go to hear the outside news. That's where the news comes first, so every gate in Israel is going to be full of people trying to learn all they can. Verse 12. Awake, awake, Deborah. Awake, awake, utter a song. Arise, Barak, and lead away your captives, you son of Abinoam. Comment. There's not a man left of Sisera's army. They all fell by the sword, Judges 4:16. But with the Canaanites defeated, it seems Barak took some of the non-combatant Canaanites in the land captive for servitude. This would be a violation of Yahweh's commandment to leave alive none of them that breathes, Deuteronomy 20:16. However, since the time that Yahweh gave that commandment, Yahweh said he would no longer drive out any of the nations, Judges 2:21, not hastily anyway, Judges 2:23. So we might construe this to mean that Israel no longer has permission to kill every inhabitant without special orders from Yahweh. So in lieu of that order, Israel's taking captives for servitude. Verse 13. Then a remnant of the nobles and the people came down. Yahweh came down for me against the mighty. Comment, because times were hard, there was only a remnant of people left. In other words, the population of Israelites had dwindled, but Yahweh came down against their mighty oppressors. Verse 14. Those whose root is in Amalek came out of Ephraim. After you, Benjamin, among your peoples. Governors came down out of Machir. Those who handle the marshal's staff came out of Zebulun. The princes of Issachar were with Deborah. As was Issachar, so was Barak. They rushed into the valley at his feet. Comment, Judges 12:5 indicates there were Amalekites who more or less had taken over the hill country of Ephraim. Here we learn that Israelites came out to fight not only from Naphtali and Zebulun, but also from Ephraim, Benjamin, Issachar, and Machir, which is Manasseh. It says they rushed into the valley at his feet, meaning they valiantly followed Barak as he charged down Mount Tabor to attack Sisera's army in the valley. But coming up, some of the tribes didn't show up, still in verse 15. By the watercourses of Reuben there were great resolves of heart. Why did you sit among the sheepfolds to hear the whistling for the flocks? At the watercourses of Reuben there were great searchings of heart. Comment, this is an indictment of Reuben. They tended their flocks while others were fighting. In Reuben, it says there were great searchings of heart, meaning they thought hard about it, but in the end they chose to stay home to their shame. Verse 17. Gilead lived beyond the Jordan. Why did Dan remain in the ships? Asher sat still at the haven of the sea and lived by his creeks. Comment, in addition to Reuben, there were other Israelites who didn't come to the fight, including Israelites across the Jordan in the mountainous region of Gilead, also in Dan and also by the coast in Asher. The Asherites relaxed by the sea and by pleasant creeks while other tribes were risking their lives. Verse 18. Zebulun was a people that jeopardized their lives to the death. Naphtali also on the high places of the field. Comment, Zebulun and Naphtali distinguished themselves more than all. Verse 19. The kings came and fought. Then the kings of Canaan fought at Taanach by the waters of Megiddo. They took no plunder of silver. Comment, the kings of the various Canaanite cities came out to fight with Captain Sisera, expecting to win and take plunder, but that didn't happen. They took no plunder. In fact, they lost their lives. Verse 20. From the sky the stars fought. From their courses they fought against Sisera. The river Kishon swept them away, that ancient river, the river Kishon. My soul, march on with strength. Comment, Sisera's army was so confused by Yahweh, it seemed the stars or the heavens were fighting against them, and indeed, heaven was fighting against them. Some of them wound up floating down the river Kishon. It says, my soul march on with strength. In other words, a victory like that strengthens the soul. It does wonders to lift a person's outlook on the future. Verse 22. Then the horse hoof stamped because of the prancing of their strong ones. Comment, this brings to mind the enemy's horses that pull the 900 chariots. Horses and chariots are very expensive and high-tech. Israel had nothing but themselves and their makeshift weapons, but mostly their God. Verse 23. Curse Meroz, said Yahweh's angel. Curse bitterly its inhabitants because they didn't come to help Yahweh against the mighty. Comment, this is the only mention of Meroz in the Bible, which seems to be a place devoid of volunteers that went to the fight. Cursed be Meroz, it says. As for you and me, Christian, we must join whatever fight to which Yahweh calls us. It's a dishonor to sit and do nothing when the call has gone out. Why would we sit at home anyway when Yahweh always wins? Verse 24, Jael shall be blessed above women, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Blessed shall she be above women in the tent. He asked for water, she gave him milk. She brought him butter in a lordly dish. She put her hand to the tent peg and her right hand to the workman's hammer. With the hammer she struck Sisera. She struck through his head. Yes, she pierced and struck through his temples. At her feet he bowed, he fell, he lay. At her feet he bowed, he fell. Where he bowed, there he fell down dead. Comment, is this in poor taste? Is it unseemly to celebrate the blood of Yahweh's enemies? Most definitely not. The opposite is true. We should indeed celebrate his judgment. The heavens rejoice when Yahweh brings judgment, Revelation 18:20. It's never a good thing when you and I take personal revenge, but always a good thing when Yahweh does. From the New Testament, quote, "Don't seek revenge yourselves, beloved, but give place to God's wrath, for it is written, 'Vengeance belongs to me, I will repay,' says the Lord." The fight against Sisera was Yahweh's fight. Now coming up, we have a poignant picture of Captain Sisera's mother looking out a window, looking for her son to return from battle and wondering why it's taking so long. There was every indication that this would be an easy fight and that he would return home with plunder, including women taken captive, and fine clothing. They become accustomed to plundering Israel. Her servants, Sisera's mother's servants, give her encouraging words while she waits and tries to dispel the worry with every optimistic thought she can come up with. Verse 28, "Through the window she looked out and cried. Sisera's mother looked through the lattice. Why is his chariot so long in coming? Why do the wheels of his chariot wait?" Her wise ladies answered her. Yes, she returned answer to herself. Have they not divided the plunder? A lady, 2 ladies to every man. To Sisera a plunder of dyed garments, a plunder of dyed garments embroidered, on both sides on the necks of the plunder. Comment, Sisera's mother will soon learn why her son's chariot hasn't come. It's not because he's dividing the plunder. Now the last verse, verse 31. "So let all your enemies perish, Yahweh, but let those who love him be as the sun when it rises in its strength." Then the land had rest 40 years. Comment, all this annihilation of Yahweh's enemies is a lesson to the modern church. Yahweh has brought judgment in the past, and he'll do it again. Verse 31 says, quote, "So let all your enemies perish," end quote. They will. Matthew 25:41. That's the chapter. Judges 6 is next at landofhavilah.net. Judges 6.